So you're planning to build your first epoxy table, or you built one already for a client and they called you a few months after saying the epoxy table is cracking. I'm going to give you the number one reason why epoxy tables are cracking. Let's go. So in this video, we are specifically going to discuss why epoxy tables are cracking. So with thousands and thousands of hours of research on how to build epoxy tables and years of experience in building these tables, I'm going to share with you my input and my knowledge, exactly what we went through. And I'm going to share with you exactly everything you need to do and don't do when you start building these tables. So the number one reason why epoxy tables are cracking. Why is your epoxy pulling apart from your wood? And the number one reason for that is moisture content. That's the biggest thing why epoxy tables are pulling apart. What do I mean by this? It means that when you look at a tree when it's still in the ground, it has like 100% moisture inside the tree. When they're going to cut the tree down, that tree still got moisture inside. And when it finally goes to the sawmill, and they cut the tree into slabs, the slabs still has moisture content inside of them. So what that means is, when you're going to start build your epoxy table, over time the slab starts to dry. And when wood starts to dry, the wood starts to shrink and it starts to bend and twist. That's the absolute number one reason why epoxy tables are cracking. So how do you know the percentage of moisture that's in your slab? Well, that's easy with a moisture meter. Don't even waste your time in buying a cheap moisture meter because it's not accurate. Even the mid-range moisture meters are not accurate. Luckily for us, where we take all our slabs to go and dry, our suppliers got an extremely expensive moisture meter. And the reason why we like this specific moisture is it's got these two little pins you hit right into the core of the slab, and it's measuring the percentage of moisture that's in the core of the slab. These surface mount moisture meters I don't trust at all because they only measure about 10 to 15 mils inside your slab. So it doesn't measure the moisture content to the core of the slab. And that's insanely critical to know the percentage of moisture that's in your slab. So unfortunately for us in South Africa, the suppliers we've got here that's supplying slabs, we don't get kiln dry slabs, unfortunately. The famous line all our suppliers tells us, all our slabs is 100% dry. This tree is lying here for more than 2 years. This tree has been cut 3 years ago. Well, that's a bunch of With our experience, the country I'm from, South Africa, you don't get dry slabs here. We've went from corner to corner of South Africa and we don't get dry slabs. This is the next point I want to get to. Wherever you get your wooden slabs from, you want the moisture readings of the slab before you buy it. They need to show you physically on their device that the slabs is dry. Now, I know in the States, in the UK and Canada, they do things way different there, and maybe in other countries also. I know there's a lot of suppliers that's doing this properly. They've got this massive kiln ovens that the wood is stacked for months and months and maybe even years, and you can just walk in and buy a dry slab straight off the shelf. Unfortunately for us in South Africa, it doesn't work that way. All the slabs we buy from all the different suppliers, and even if they guarantee you the slabs are dry, it's not dry. And that's the main reason why your epoxy is cracking from your table. So at what moisture level does your slab need to be to do epoxy tables? Well, with our research and the way we build tables, we will strongly recommend anything under 12% is very good to build epoxy tables. And if you're planning on building a live edge table, anything under 18% would be perfect. And another thing to know how your slab is dry, and something you can check off the bat, is the bark will come off very easily. Well, not very easily, but it won't stick as much as on the wet slabs. So that's also a good way to see if your slabs is dry. The one thing you must always tell your clients, remember, wood is something that's alive. If you're going to build an epoxy table and say, for instance, your client always messes water on the table and stuff like that, over years, the wood soaks up the water. That can also be a cause why the epoxy table is cracking. And the next point I want to get to, also a reason why your epoxy table is cracking, your mixing ratios can be wrong. So you need to make sure wherever you buy your epoxy from, you follow the recipe to the T. Now I know when we're measuring the amount of epoxy we're going to use, we have to calculate the volume, then the liters we have to convert to kilogram, we can measure the amount of resin and hardener we're going to need for our tables. So the one question we get a lot from our fans and the social media platforms is, are we installing C channels on our tables? And the answer to that is, it all depends on the table we build. Some tables we install it, some tables we don't. So the specific tables we like to build and design needs to be about 50% epoxy and 50% wood. That's the design we like, and that's the style of epoxy tables we like to build. And most of our tables is transparent tables, or it will be a smoky table, and that's not going to allow us to install the C channel, because you don't want the C channel to run in between the epoxy, and that's not going to look nice. So the solution to this is you need to make sure the steel base you're building for the table needs to be solid. Don't go for the cheapest steel on the market. Buy very thick steel, 3 to 4 millimeters, and make sure the base you build for your table is a solid base. The steel beams you're going to install underneath your table needs to hold your table in place. Because remember, you already got the dry slab. So it already made it twists and turns and the cracks and all that stuff. So the table is pretty much set. So just to prevent the table from maybe the last bits and pieces of turning, you need to make sure you have a solid base. And that's going to prevent your table even from thinking of maybe twisting a little bit. You need to have a solid base. And I think we covered all the aspects of making sure you've got dry wood before you even start thinking of building your epoxy table. Next week we're going to launch another video and going into more depth of how to design and prep for your epoxy tables and how to build a mold for your epoxy tables. And if you want to stay updated with all our projects, I am going to leave a link down in the description where you can follow us on all our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook. And make sure you hit the notification button so you stay updated with everything we are busy with. And if you want to contribute to the channel, help us grow, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video. It's honestly helping with the YouTube algorithm, and it's going to help us grow and help us to produce future content. Thanks guys, see you next week. Cheers.